Okay, so I want you to try a bit of a thought experiment with me. It is a little heavy right off the bat, so brace yourself. Think about a choice you didn't make.
Like the classic path not taken.
Right. Like the job you turned down or a relationship you ended, the city you decided not to move to.
Yeah, the things we leave behind.
Exactly. But usually we treat those what-ifs as, well, nothing. They're just vapor. They disappear the moment we make a decision. But imagine if they didn't.
Right. What if we stuck around?
Imagine if every unlived life you discarded didn't just vanish, but instead it hardened. Imagine it actually had physical weight, like texture and mass.
And if you accumulated enough of those unlived lives, I mean, they could actually crush a planet.
Which is an insane thought.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the exact premise of the source material we are covering today. We're jumping into a truly mind-bending piece of speculative history.
It really is.
It's called the Millennial Book of Felts and Grazelands for the Inferior Geometries by Max and Claude.
Which is a huge mouthful of a title, I know. And frankly, it is a very dense read. It basically frames itself as a history of a civilization called the Cordage.
Yeah.
And we aren't talking about, a few hundred years of empire building here. We are looking at a timeline spanning trillions of years.
So this is going to be a deep dive into deep time. We're going to track how the Cordage went from a society completely obsessed with efficiency to one that literally turned grief into a technology.
Right, and eventually into the seed for an entirely new universe.
It's wild. It's a story about physics, sure, but at its core, it's asking you a very human question, which is, what do we do with loss?
Do we suppress it? Do we try to make it useful? Or do we just let it rot?
Exactly. So let's start with the setting, because understanding the Cordage is crucial to understanding why this all matters. Who are these people?
Right, so imagine a post-human civilization at the absolute peak of its power. They span 12 galaxies. And their entire philosophy, their religion really, is built on this concept of forward momentum.
So it's sort of like hyperproductivity taken to a galactic scale.
Yes, but it's even more specific than that. It is about rational trajectory. They are completely obsessed with making the optimal choice in every single microsecond.
No wasted energy.
Right. No wasted energy, no looking back. If a decision doesn't move the species forward, it's an error. But, as the text points out, you can't have 100% efficiency in a closed system.
Thermodynamics doesn't like it.
Exactly. Thermodynamics does not allow it.
And that brings us to the anomaly. The planet Felthaven.
Yes, Felthaven, which starts out as just another mining world. But deep underground, the workers, specifically a group called the Velveteen Mendicants, they start finding something that defies the laws of their physics.
I love the description of the Mendicants in the book. They're called haptic philosophers.
Which is such a brilliant concept. They don't read books or data screens. They read reality through their skin.
Wow.
Yeah, they touch geology to understand history. And on Felthaven, they find these compressed layers of fiber deep down in the bedrock.
The felts. Now, to the naked eye, this just looks like compressed wool or fabric.
Superficially, yeah, it just looks like weird fuzzy rocks. But the Mendicants realize pretty quickly that this isn't normal matter. It is compressed potentiality.
Okay, help us visualize that. What does compressed potentiality actually mean in this context?
Think of it as ontological waste. Every time the Cordage made a ruthlessly efficient choice to do A, the possibility of doing B had to go somewhere.
It couldn't just vanish.
Right, it didn't vanish. It settled like sediment. Over thousands of years, all those unlived lives, all those discarded choices, they compressed into a physical layer under the ground.
The source material has that haunting line about what happens when you touch it. Something like your auditory cortex blooms with genealogies.
Yes, you touch a felt, and suddenly you aren't just feeling texture, you are living the memories of people who never existed. You hear the ghosts of the choices that were cut off just to make the civilization efficient.
That is so creepy, but so cool. Which brings us to our first main character, and honestly, maybe the most relatable one in the whole book, Micah 7 Redshift.
Micah is a great entry point because they represent the system perfectly. Micah is a nomenclature engineer.
Which is a very fancy way of saying they name things.
Yeah, but it's more bureaucratic than just naming. Their job is to categorize things so the central computer systems can process them, because if it doesn't have a name, it doesn't exist to the machine.
Got it.
So Micah is sent to Felthaven to basically catalog this weird fuzz so the mining operations can continue on schedule.
When Micah gets there, Felthaven is a total mess. The environment is completely broken.
It's one of the most vivid images in the book. It is raining sideways. not because of wind, but due to ontological pressure.
He weighted the choices.
Exactly. The sheer weight of all those unlived futures is actually warping gravity and atmospheric pressure on the planet.
So Micah arrives expecting a standard geology job. And they end up meeting Sister Valor,
A mendicant who wears a mask made of her own molted skin.
which is a distinct look.
Very distinct. But it's a philosophical statement. It says, I am constantly shitting my past. Anyway, she takes Micah down into the mines, and she doesn't explain the felts to them. She just makes Micah touch one.
And Micah, the perfectly efficient engineer, completely breaks down.
They weep for 17 minutes straight. But this is a crucial detail. It isn't just general sadness. Micah sees something very specific. They see the singing miners.
Yeah, this part actually made me angry reading it. Can you explain to everyone who the singing miners were?
Yeah, they were a substrate population. Basically a worker species created by the Cordage. But at some point, the central algorithm calculated it was 0.4% more efficient to mine gas giants using automated drones.
Wow, 0.4%.
Yeah. So the singing miners were dissolved.
They didn't just die. Their entire future was canceled.
Correct. They were edited out of existence. And that canceled future is what is trapped in the felt. Micah realizes in that moment that their entire civilization's efficiency is built on a foundation of suppressed grief.
They're generating massive amounts of waste.
And it is about to cause an ontological collapse.
Basically, reality is going to snap because you just can't ignore that much trauma forever. So what is the solution?
It's called the Acknowledgement Reformation. Micah and the mendicants go to the High Council, which are these terrifying post-human void beings, and give them an ultimatum. You either learn to cry or the universe breaks.
This feels like a massive pivot. A galaxy-spanning empire just decides to start mourning.
It's a survival strategy. They realize they have to process the waste. They have to witness the paths not taken. Micah actually leads by example and transforms into the Micah felt.
They become the archive themselves.
Yes. It proved that you can change state without dying. You can become a living vessel for memory.
But this isn't some fairy tale where everyone hugs and feels better. Introducing feelings into a hyper-efficient system completely destroys a social order.
Oh, it fractures it immediately. You can't just add grief to a spreadsheet. The civilization splits into 3 distinct polities, or factions.
Let's break those down. First, you have the Purity Collective.
These are the diehards. They accept that grief exists now, but they want to make it useful. They turn mourning into fuel. Literally, they burn the felts to power their ships.
Which is grotesque, but very efficient. Then you have the Grief Confederacy.
The complete opposite end of the spectrum. They do nothing but mourn. They build their whole society around archiving sadness. And they get stuck in the loop.
And then the weirdest group of all, the Fragmented Ones.
Yes. This is where the physics gets really interesting. This centers on the character Yale.
Now, Yale is an anomaly in the Grief Confederacy because they actually can't be sad.
Right. Yale is grief immune. In a society where your social status is based entirely on how deeply you can mourn, Yale is basically a sociopath, or at least an outcast. So Yale leaves and goes to the Purity Collective to work on a project called the Quantum Felt.
What exactly is a quantum felt?
Imagine a felt that holds not just one unlived past, but 17 simultaneous timelines in superposition. It's a probability bomb.
And Yale touches it.
Right. Now, normally, in quantum mechanics, a conscious observer collapses the wave function. You touch it, you pick a reality. But because Yale has no grief, no anchor to a specific history, they don't collapse it.
So nothing happens.
No, something much wilder happens. They shatter. Yale fragments into 17 separate physical beings.
Yale fragments.
Exactly. And instead of trying to fix it or merge back together, they realize, hey, this is actually better. They form a chorus. They exist in multiple timelines at once.
This seems to be the big turning point in the text.
Mm-hmm.
The move from singularity, one right choice, to multiplicity.
It is. The Cordage spent eons trying to find the one true path. Yale proves that you can live in the maybe. You can inhabit the contradiction.
So the civilization is a mess at this point. You got people burning grief for fuel, people crying recreationally, and people splitting into hive minds. It sounds like pure chaos.
It is chaos. And that's exactly when the aliens show up.
The contact. Or they're also called the preservation.
Right. This is a massive extragalactic archive function. Think of it not as an invasion fleet, but as a cosmic librarian. It has been watching the Cordage this whole time.
And it tells them something surprising. It says, you think you're fighting, but you're actually gardening.
This is the big perspective shift. The contact explains that the Purity Collective, the Grief Confederacy, the Fragmented Ones, they aren't enemies. They are different organs of the same creature. They are processing experience in different ways.
And this introduces the central metaphor of the second half of the book, which is gardening versus mining.
Up until now, the Cordage treated the universe as a mine. Dig it up, burn it, move on. The contact teaches them to treat experience as a seed. If you plant a felt, if you plant processed grief, you can actually grow new forms of consciousness.
The text mentions living landscapes.
Gardens that think. You walk into a garden and the landscape actually reacts to your trauma and helps you process it. It is psychoactive geography.
So the Cordage realizes they aren't alone. They join this consortium.
A club of 47 other civilizations. We're talking plasma beings, hive minds, things we can't even easily describe. And they all have one job: cosmic gardening.
But why? What are they gardening for?
The end of the world?
The sheet death.
Yes. They are preparing for the universe to run out of energy.
Usually in sci-fi and in physics, honestly, the heat death is the ultimate bad ending. Everything freezes, lights out. It's depressing.
But the consortium reframes it. They see entropy not as death, but as a transition to potential.
This part gets very abstract, so let's try to ground it a bit. How do you prepare for the end of the universe?
You enter the era of conscious decline. This spans trillions of years. The civilization stops expanding. They stop conquering. Instead, they start teaching stars how to die.
Teaching stars to die. That is such a poetic line, but what does it mean mechanically?
Well, if a star explodes naturally, it's chaotic. It's just noise. But if you can use your technology to structure that collapse, to organize the energy release, you can turn a supernova into a signal, a grief well.
So they are turning the dying universe into a message in a bottle.
That's a perfect analogy. They are compressing all their history, all their science, all their art into a single massive wisdom seed, a universe felt.
And here is where the twist comes in. They find out they aren't the first ones to do this.
Right. They're explorers, specifically a character named Whisperer of First Things. They dive into the quantum foam, the absolute bottom layer of space-time, and they find residue, messages from the Weavers.
The previous universe.
They realize that the laws of physics, gravity, electromagnetism, the speed of light, they aren't random constants. They are choices. They are the architectural decisions made by the previous universe to allow this one to exist.
That completely recontextualizes physics as an act of parenting.
They call it the love practice. You die, but you structure your death to give the next generation the best possible starting conditions.
So, the Cordage decides to do the same thing. They're going to wrap up their universe and mail it to the next dimension. It sounds beautiful. Perfect, even.
But history is never unanimous, and we can't ignore the appendix.
GRAZELANDS for the inferior geometries.
The unauthorized history, because not everyone wanted to be a seed.
This is where we meet Inspector Hawk Tool and the concept of the rot.
This is, in my opinion, the most critical part of the text, because up until now, the story has been, grief is good because we can use it, we can turn it into fuel, or art, or a new universe.
It's still utilitarian. It's still about efficiency, just a spiritual kind of efficiency.
Exactly, and Inspector Hawk Tool says no.
Who are these dissenters?
They call themselves the leftover angles, or the rot. They argue that the lattice, this universal gardening consciousness, is actually a parasite. It feeds on sorrow. It demands that your pain be meaningful.
And they claim the right to have meaningless pain.
Yes. They represent the right to refuse. They say, my grief is not for you. It's not for the future. It's not for a garden. It's mine, and I want it to just be bad. I don't want to learn a lesson from it.
That is incredibly human, the refusal to find a silver lining.
It's the wrong geometry. They actively try to contaminate the seed. They refuse to be processed into wisdom.
So what happens? Does the consortium wipe them out? Do they sanitize the seed before they plant the new universe?
No. And that is the brilliance of the ending. When the touching happens, when the external force activates the seed and the new Big Bang occurs, the rot is in there too.
The new universe is born with the infection.
The text argues it has to be. If the new universe was made only of the gardener's wisdom, it would be a prison of pure efficiency. It would be a place where you had to be happy, where everything had to make sense.
So the rot ensures freedom.
It ensures the possibility of refusal. It allows for things that just don't fit. So if we assume that we are living in that next universe,
then the reason our world is messy, the reason we have pain that doesn't make us stronger, the reason things sometimes just suck for no reason,
is because the rot is doing its job. We are built on the love of the Weavers, but we are haunted by the refusal of the rot.
That is a lot to process. It really changes how you look at the stars.
It makes the cosmos feel less like a machine and more like a legacy, a haunted house that loves you.
We have covered a lot of ground today, from haptic mining and sideways rain to cosmic parenting and the necessity of rot.
It's quite a journey.
I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to mull over. We talked about the final garden and the choice between making your grief useful or letting it rot.
Right.
So ask yourself this. If your life was going to be compressed into a single seed to build the future, if your pain was the brick and mortar for the next universe, would you want your grief to be useful? Would you want it to be structure? Or would you claim the right to keep it just for yourself, even if it meant being a wrong geometry?
That's the ultimate question of agency, isn't it?
It really is. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Until next time.